Right now. I want to go back to Jake Tapper at the White House. Jake, the president went through his decision-making process here, said the operation happened today, but Osama's been in the sights for the better part of a week here.
That's right. They got the lead last August, and President Obama said that he had told when he started as president, he told his CIA director, Leon Panetta, that he wanted the capture or killing of Osama bin Laden to be the #1 priority when it came to the fight against al-Qaeda. And then in August, they got a lead. They followed the thread through, and then it was today that he gave the order, and U.S. troops were told from our reporter on the ground there in Pakistan, Nick Schifrin, that it was a joint U.S.-Pakistan operation. We'll hear more about that in the days to come, but we're told it was an on-the-ground operation in this one mansion and this one compound, and it was a successful mission. No civilians were killed, no U.S. troops were killed, and the U.S. Has bin Laden's body. There's jubilation here inside the White House, outside the White House. Tourists and others have gathered outside. They're singing the national anthem, chanting USA. Some of them are even singing na 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 goodbye to bin Laden. We should also point out, George, that 9/11, of course, was bin Laden's most devastating and deadly attack, but there are other attacks linked to al-Qaeda, including the 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, where more than 200 individuals were killed, and of course the bombing of the USS Cole, where more than, I think it was 17 service members were killed in 2000, and those families have got to be experiencing the same thing that the families of the victims of 9/11 are feeling, which is a great sense of closure, a great sense of relief, and a real happiness that the U.S. has not taken its eye off the ball throughout the Bush administration and continuing into the Obama administration.
We are joined by one of those family members right now, Deborah Burlingham. Deborah, your feelings tonight?
I'm elated. I'm elated that this man, this evil, evil, bad man who has so much blood on his hands, is now dead. And I hope very much that that we get to see pictures of his lifeless body, because I think it's going to be very important for the world to see that.
This has been so much a part of your life since 9/11. Just tell us what you felt, what you thought as you heard this news.
Well, I was stunned, and I got the call from my brother Brad, who was the person who called me on the morning of 9/11 to tell me that our brother Chick had been killed in his airplane crashing into the Pentagon. And so it was very fitting that I get this call from Brad tonight. And I have a million questions, because, you know, for the families, this has been, this man and his minions have haunted us for the last almost 10 years. And so this, I heard you say, speaking about another family member, it's true, this is the close of a very big chapter, but we are worried going forward. We worry because al-Qaeda has metastasized, and there are so many al-Qaeda affiliates now that, you know, it doesn't end it, but it's a great relief to know that this man is no longer walking.
And when you saw the president take that podium, is it what you imagined?
No, it's not. To be honest with you, I thought that this would have happened years ago, and that the announcement would come from President Bush. But I have to say, I was thrilled, and I was rooting for him tonight, the way I rooted for the president on that day, because we are one country, and I think that our military deserve the credit that he gave them tonight. I was very happy to hear him say that, because these guys have wanted him so bad. I mean, I'm talking about bin Laden. And so I was thrilled that they could do an up-close and personal attack rather than getting him from the skies with a predator.
And I don't know if you saw, as we were on earlier tonight, you must have been thrilled to see that spontaneous scene at the White House where hundreds start to gather and sing the Star-Spangled Banner. I
actually became very emotional hearing that. I wish I could be with them, because the American people, George, have been magnificent through this. They've been very, very supportive. They've never forgotten 9/11, and so yeah, I wish I were there with them.
It is an amazing scene. Let's watch.
USA! 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 USA!
outside the White House tonight, jubilation at the word from President Obama that Osama bin Laden has been killed. We're joined on the phone now by Deborah Burlingham. Her brother flew the plane into the Pentagon, was the pilot of the plane into the Pentagon on 9/11. And you see Americans start to react. You heard the news from your brother. 10 years, nearly 10 years to the day when those planes went into the World Trade Center, when the plane your brother was piloting went into the Pentagon. We have the news that Osama bin Laden has been killed. A long time coming for you and your family, Deborah.
Yes, it has been, and it's been rough because it has pretty much dominated my life, all of these national security issues. And we're not out of the woods, George, but this is really big because one of my brothers called me tonight. I have two other brothers, and he said, Deborah, you know, I told you I wasn't going to take my American flag down until they caught Osama bin Laden. And I said, Mark, leave it up. Don't take it down until every last American serviceman and woman has come home. So, yeah, it's very emotional for us.
What's the first thing you're going to think of when you wake up tomorrow morning?
I suppose I'm going to be thinking of my brother, Chick. You know, he was a military man, George. He was a very elite naval aviator, carrier-based naval aviator, and Chick would be, I'd like to think that he's smiling down on those guys who pulled this mission off, all of them. He'd be very proud, and I think he would wish he could be with them.
I'm sure of that. And Deborah Burlingham, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your commitment over this last decade. It is now just after midnight here on the East Coast, 9 o'clock on the West to wrap up. Osama bin Laden is dead. He is killed. Been killed earlier today in American operation in Abbottabad, Pakistan. President Obama just announced moments ago, addressed the nation, saying that Osama bin Laden has been killed after 10 years of service and struggle and sacrifice. Justice has been served. We're joined here by our team of correspondents, Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross. He's killed just outside of the capital of Pakistan.
About 90 miles north of Islamabad, in a city of 80 to 90,000 people. So he was not in a cave in the mountains. He was in a city in Pakistan. And the question is now, how could he have been there for so long? President Obama said tonight they got a tip last August, the lead that he was there. By one description, he was living in a mansion. And that's where the firefight took place today. On orders from President Obama, U.S. soldiers went across the border into Pakistan, engaged in the firefight, and as he said, they killed bin Laden.
They killed bin Laden. They have his body. The DNA had been checked. Martha Raddatz, our chief diplomatic correspondent. Martha, no word tonight on Osama bin Laden's number 2, Ayman al-Zawahiri.
Yeah, I certainly noticed that in President Obama's speech. It is clear that Zawahiri was not with him, or I believe they would have announced that tonight. And obviously they've had several days to try and figure out who was killed in that firefight. We have always thought that they were side by side almost all the time. You know, one thing I'm thinking about this compound, George, is it is basically those drones that drove him out of those mountains. That relentless campaign, the relentless intelligence gathering in that area and going after militants. I suspect Osama bin Laden did not feel safe there anymore. Obviously, he kept moving, on the move constantly. There were reports through the years that perhaps he was hiding in a city, but for him to be there for that many months and being tracked that many months, and the Pakistanis apparently didn't know, or they knew, and we'll have to see how big a role the Pakistanis played. The U.S. would have gone in there no matter what. Intel officials have always told me, military officials have always told me, if we believe we know where he is, we're going in to get him, whether we get permission or not. Now, the Pakistanis are saying tonight it was a joint mission. We'll have to know how long the Pakistanis knew about this, and obviously the hunt will continue for Zawahiri. Also, one point, George, I heard Deborah say that she wishes she could see a picture of bin Laden's dead body. That may well happen. If you'll recall, when Zarqawi was captured in Iraq, the head of al-Qaeda in Iraq, they did show pictures of his dead body to prove to people, to prove to the world that he was dead. So I would not be surprised at all if you saw pictures of bin Laden's
Right,
body.
because so many people would still doubt this until they see the pictures themselves. That's exactly right. Martha Raddatz, thanks very much. I want to go to Pierre Thomas now, covers the Justice Department for us, FBI, for us. Any word tonight on what kind of precautions might be taken right now, Pierre, for any kind of retaliatory attacks?
George, bulletins will be going out to law enforcement agencies around the country because law enforcement will be at a sort of tiptoe status for the coming days. I spoke to a senior FBI official tonight, and he said the following: while there's no specific threat, this has the potential for all kinds of bad things. And one important note that I found really interesting, he also said that, look, we're obviously very happy. We're thrilled that this took place, but we now have to look forward. So they're not even taking a moment to really enjoy this too much, because the official said, look, we have to worry about Al-Qaeda in Pakistan, Afghanistan still. We have to worry about Al-Qaeda in Yemen, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and specifically Anwar al-Awlaki, I'm being told by sources, is viewed as a more imminent threat perhaps than bin Laden was. So that is a huge issue going forward. They were the ones who apparently tried to attack us on Christmas Day in December of 2009. They were the ones, according to sources, who tried to blow up those parcel bombs in last October. So this threat goes forward, and law enforcement officials say for the coming next few days, they will be taking every effort that they can to make sure that nothing else happens.
Okay, Pierre, thanks very much. We're joined now by Bill Doyle on the phone. He's the father of Joseph Doyle, who's working at Cantor Fitzgerald, a victim of the North Tower collapse on 9/11. Bill, what a night for you.
I'm ecstatic, and you got to give congratulations and say thank you to the forces, our armed forces, and to this president, okay, who swore to us, many of the 9/11 family, that one of his primary goals was to get bin Laden. We can go back, and unfortunately it didn't happen earlier, but I remember when many people questioned why we went into Iraq. And then years later, Mr. Bush said, mission accomplished. Okay, and I always said to myself, what mission's accomplished? This person has killed almost 3,000 people, and not only that, how many men are suffering from going through the debris down at Ground Zero that have lost their lives? How many of our military looking for bin Laden have lost their lives?
I can hear the emotion in your voice, Bill. There has been so much sacrifice in the United States. Those of you, your families, made in many ways the greatest sacrifice. And I know that for the longest time, you didn't believe the United States was doing enough.
I started to wondering if they had their eye on the ball. I mean, because, from all reports and all the coming back to even myself, they knew where this man was. And I'm saying, is it really their number one priority? And Mr. Obama, President Obama, made certainly, he made it known when he got elected that this was going to be his priority. And he kept his word. He got him.
And tonight there is, as he said, justice has been done.
Justice has been done, but I don't think the United States, or for that matter, France, Germany, England, I think they all got to keep their eye on the ball, because I imagine terrorist threats are going to be around for a while now, or some kind of retaliation of some kind, right? And but I am ecstatic, and I'm sure most of the families are. Is it closure? No. I mean, you're not going to bring back my son, 10 years later. I mean, I haven't had a son, and now to see this happen, good. At least that mission is accomplished. But what we have to do is do something about their movement in the first place. Now it's splintered off all into different groups. I mean, it's going to be difficult, and I'm very pleased that their eye is still on the ball.
And we're pleased that you could join us tonight, Bill. Of course, still sorry for your loss, but grateful tonight that justice has been done. I want to go back to Jake Tapper at the White House. And Jake, that crowd continues to grow outside the gates of the White House.
That's right. An ABC News employee was out there just a few minutes ago. She said it was like the running of the bulls. Just so many people celebrating, so much jubilation with this news. A senior administration official has started to share more details with ABC News, including the information that, as the president said, last August we got, the U.S. Got intelligence about this compound, but it wasn't until February that they determined that this intelligence actually was sound. In the middle of March, the president had a series of national security meetings to talk about the next course of action. You might recall, George, in the month of March there was a lot of tension between the CIA and the Pakistani intelligence service, the ISI. We don't know if this was playing a role, but I can't imagine that it didn't, because the U.S. was trying to convince the Pakistanis to do more in this fight against al-Qaeda. The president has chaired no fewer than 5 national security meetings on this specific operation. He gave the final order to pursue the operation last Friday, and then of course today was the order to actually go into the compound and kill bin Laden, with no civilians killed, no injuries or deaths to U.S. troops.
And Jake, this is all happening as the president making a major shift in his intelligence and national security operations, taking the head of the intelligence effort, Leon Panetta, the CIA, moving him to the Pentagon, and the commanding general of American forces in Afghanistan, David Petraeus, moving him over to the CIA, 2 central figures in this operation.
That's exactly right. Petraeus, of course, having commanded this operation, and Panetta having been in charge of the intelligence leading to it. And of course, they will still be playing major roles. Panetta at the Defense Department and Petraeus at the CIA, of course, if both are confirmed by the Senate. But they are men that the president has an incredible amount of confidence in. How they fit into their new jobs is, of course, remains to be seen. But they are individuals the president has tremendous confidence in and respect for. And this operation, of course, will go down in history as one of the most successful military operations, if not the most successful, against al-Qaeda.
Without any American casualties. Okay, Jake Tapper, thanks very much. I want to go to John Carl now. He covers Capitol Hill for us. The president reaching out in the last several hours to bipartisan leaders on Capitol Hill, and the reaction, the congratulations coming in. John Carl, you there? Okay, let me come back now to Brian Ross joined here. We'll go back to John in just a minute. Our chief investigative correspondent, you have some more of these surveillance photos.
Yeah, these are some of the photos we're getting from Google Earth of this town of Abbottabad. It is a major city on the N35 road, a major highway out of Islamabad. And according to the president and to our own information now, this is where bin Laden has been hiding, not in the mountain regions, but in a populated city. It would make it more difficult, I imagine, to launch a drone strike in such a crowded city with women and children apparently in the compound. So it was a targeted attack. 20 to 30 people were told would be the approximate size. The president called it a small team. People who were in joint special operations say that would be approximately the size of the unit that would go in, with several helicopters to go in, get the body and get the men back out of there. One of the choppers, we're told by our Nick Schifrin in Pakistan, was damaged and then destroyed by U.S. forces, so it was not left behind and captured.
It's such a small team.
Absolutely. This is how they would operate, fast and quick and small, and not to draw attention to themselves at all, if possible. But this is deep into Pakistan. This is a city with a large military camp, we're told, and a favorite of honeymooners in Pakistan. It's known as a summer resort city.
Boy, Brian, it's hard to believe that he could have been there, he could have survived there for so long without the support of major figures in the Pakistani military, the Pakistani government.
I think that's an important question that needs to be answered. Who knew, and how long had they known that he was there? He was right under the nose of the Pakistani military. If he was in this city that long, with a major military encampment there.
Okay, Brian, thanks very much. John Carl is on the line right now. John?
Yes, George, we're getting reaction coming in from the Hill, but I do have from national security sources a few more details I wanted to share with you. One of the question that we've raised earlier, Ayman Zawahiri, the number 2, bin Laden's number 2, was not in the compound, not killed as part of this operation. And I am told that not only did our forces, the U.S. forces, go in on the ground, and by the way, I am told by U.S. national security officials this was not a joint operation with the Pakistanis. In fact, there was discussion about when exactly to notify them. They were so worried that there could be a tip-off, that the notification went in very late as this operation was already underway. But I am told that these forces went in there was a firefight, shot bin Laden, shot those with him, but were able to spare women and children that were in the compound. Still learning more details is coming in, but this was very much a combat on the ground, a firefight on the ground. As far as congressional leadership, the president himself called Speaker of the House John Boehner to tell him of this news, and the reaction pouring in, as you can imagine, George, statements coming from the entire leadership, Democrat, Republican, saying that this is a great day, a great tribute to the men and women of the U.S. military, the CIA, saying this is a monumental development. But there's also a reality check here. Al-Qaeda is not a hierarchy; it is a network. And as important as this was, and as important symbolically as it was to take out the leader of that network, he was not necessarily the one calling the shots, and they had franchised the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, based in Yemen, now seen as a principal threat. It is not going to go away simply because bin Laden, the leader of the Al-Qaeda network, is gone. One other point that's been raised to me, George, by the national security officials I've been speaking to is that they hope that there was a great deal of intelligence gathered from the compound. As you can imagine, U.S. forces going in on the ground the way they did. The other advantage in terms of being able to definitively get the body, make sure that this was without any question that bin Laden was dead. They were also able to gather intelligence from that site, take with them everything they could possibly get, computer hard drives, anything else that bin Laden and the people with him had by way of information on the rest of the network.
Okay, John and Carl, thanks very much. I want to go back to the tape we have of Washington celebrations outside the White House gates right now. And John, stay with me because you're seeing these people rush towards the White House. Absolute jubilation.
Yeah.
And that is only going to increase as daylight breaks over Washington and the rest of the country. And John, the president's saying quite explicitly tonight that he hopes that this will bring back the kind of unity we saw in those days immediately after 9/11. Yeah,
and unity, I mean, this is a great moment. One of the things that is that the president, in terms of bringing Leon Panetta in and telling him that the capturing, killing Osama bin Laden was the top priority in the war against Al-Qaeda, that was the top priority under the previous administration as well. There is absolutely no daylight between Democrat and Republican on the importance of what just happened in Pakistan and the tribute given to those who pulled it off. I mean, heroic action, incredibly dangerous action going into the heart of Pakistan, people who you and I, we will never know their names. And you can imagine that kind of jubilation is going to be seen throughout the country and certainly among Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, this is an operation that knows no politics at all. It has been the goal of Republican and Democratic administrations since President Clinton was in office back in 1998. We're now joined on the phone by Stephen Hadley. He was the National Security Advisor under President George W. Bush. Osama bin Laden, the focus of so many of your efforts in the National Security Council under President Bush. Stephen Hadley, you must be incredibly gratified tonight.
It's a great night for America. It's a great night for those who lost loved ones on 9/11, and it's a great night for the victims of terror around the world that this man has now been brought to justice.
Does it surprise you that he was found so close, in a major city so close to Islamabad?
It does, hiding in plain sight. It is not what we expected. It's not where a lot of indications suggested he was. The president indicated, and it's been backgrounded tonight, they got a lead last summer and they followed it up, and that led to the operation tonight. But I think this has been a 10-year campaign by our intelligence personnel, and they finally hit pay dirt.
Well, when you, of course, left office in 2008, where did you think Osama bin Laden was during your time?
For the last 4 or 5 years, we had very little intelligence at all where he was. Our expectation was that he was in the tribal areas, probably up north in the tribal areas, under protection from one of the tribal leaders there. Yeah, I think it's a big surprise at the end of the day that he was, as they say, hiding in plain view.
Sorry, Stephen, I just had one more question. I was talking to Brian Ross about this just a moment ago. This was not a joint operation with the Pakistanis. What do you expect the reverberations to be there?
Well, the president said that the Pakistanis contributed to the intelligence that led to this. You know, the president said that he made clear, and I know President Bush made clear, that if we had an opportunity to get at the number 1 or number 2 leaders of Al-Qaeda, we would take that. And that was clearly what the president ordered, and that came to fruition tonight. But I was buoyed and encouraged by the fact that the Pakistanis were cooperative in this effort. And as the president pointed out, of course, they are a victim of Al-Qaeda as well, and it's very much in the interest of the Pakistani people that Osama bin Laden is dead.
Okay, Stephen Halley, thanks very much. Of course, National Security Advisor, President George W. Bush. I want to go now down to ground zero. Of course, Chris Cuomo, the crowd's gathering there as well.
Hey, George, how are you? I hope you can hear me. It's a wild scene. There's probably 1,000 people here. They feed all the media to the scene. There's only 1 or 2 satellite trucks down here. A couple of people came early on with kids. They are families of survivors, of victims, and it was solemn. And then people started to come, 5 by 5, 10 by 10. And now it's chants of celebration. They're singing the national anthem. They're singing God Bless America. Every vehicle that passes by is honking its horns in celebration. There's a lot of emotion down here, singling out a couple of the people who said they lost people at on 9/11. And I asked them, what is the significance to you? One of them said, it's over now. Now it's over. But there's a lot of celebration, George. You can hear it.
Boy, I can hear the excitement in your voice. I can hear that excitement behind you. Chris Cuomo, thanks very much. We'll come back to you in just a little bit, but I want to go to the White House again right now. Jake Tapper getting more details on what it was like inside the Situation Room today after President Obama authorized this operation.
Incredibly intense. The Navy SEALs, 2 helicopters full of Navy SEALs, went to this compound, and the national security team was here on pins and needles, worried about what was going to happen. Let's take a step back and figure out how this happened. Senior administration officials tell us that about 4 years ago, there was intelligence that came in on 2 of the couriers that bin Laden used when he would deliver messages to the outside world through Al Jazeera or other networks. That was 4 years ago. 2 years ago, intelligence identified where one of these couriers lived, where he and his brother operated. But it wasn't until last August that they had an idea of where exactly their residence was. Then they did surveillance of this residence. It was an area with extremely high walls, no television, no phone. They burned their trash, and they concluded this was a compound that was custom built. It was built in, I think, 2005. Custom built to hide somebody. It had very high walls. There didn't seem any other reason for this compound in this affluent area of Pakistan to look the way it was and operate the way it was. So then the assignment was given, and the troops went in, the Navy SEALs went in. It took some time to get to this area from Afghanistan. The operation itself took about 40 minutes. 2 couriers were killed in addition to bin Laden. One of bin Laden's adult sons was also killed, and a woman who was used as a shield by Al-Qaeda was also killed. In addition, the U.S. lost one of the helicopters, but as we've said, no U.S. soldiers were killed in this operation. Back in the Situation Room, it wasn't until the helicopter got back from Pakistan to Afghanistan that they could breathe a sigh of relief. It was an incredibly intense few hours, I'm told by senior administration officials, but at the end of it, good news, hugs, celebration.
What a
George.
moment that must have been. Okay, Jake Tapper, thanks very much. I have Christiane Amanpour with me here in the studio. And Christiane, you made the point earlier that the revolutions that had spread across the Middle East earlier this year in some ways were in defiance of Osama bin Laden.
Indeed, and look, as we've all been saying this evening, he hasn't been pulling the strings on Al-Qaeda for many years. Many say it's his deputy, but also these other sub-Al-Qaeda groups that have sprung up. But trying to again reassert relevance after these uprisings came out, his deputy Zawahiri put out some statements trying to sort of hijack these.
But they always seem to be playing catch-up there.
Right, exactly. And so this is what people have been saying over the last several years. Osama bin Laden, as evil and as mastermind he was over 9/11, and of course some of the sort of fallout, for instance, in Iraq with Al-Qaeda there that cropped up, over the last several years has been less effective himself. You've seen very little of him, very few videos, very few audio tapes. It's really been his deputy. But what people are very concerned about in the intelligence community are these ones in Yemen, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, as we've been talking about. So I think that is what people are going to be looking at very closely.
And there had been so much concern for so many years that you didn't want to make Osama bin Laden a martyr. You wanted to have the defeat, but there was this fear that if he were made some kind of a martyr, he could be even stronger in death than he was in life. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
No, but I think symbolically what is crucial is this moment, that he has been killed, that if they do put a picture out, it will put pay to any support he has in the region, wherever it is. I think people who support him will feel symbolically crushed by this and will be on their back foot, those who support him. And listen, for him to be in Abbottabad, in a compound, as we've been told, some are now saying that it's only about 40 miles from Islamabad, that does mean there had to be some protection from around. Some people had to know he was there. So there was support still.
So this could lead to more tension with the United States and Pakistani relations.
Which is extremely high right now. No matter what the U.S. says about Pakistani cooperation, relations have almost never been so bad since the war in terror has started.
David Muir, we've seen the celebrations at the White House. We've seen the celebrations at Ground Zero tonight. You've been tracking the reaction coming in on the social networks.
Oh, it's almost immediate. The people saying, first and foremost, thankful for the efforts of the U.S. military, not only in Iraq, but Afghanistan now, going on so many years. And I can't help but to forget being at March Air Force Base in California, where they were operating the drones, George, that would fire these strikes over Afghanistan. They wouldn't talk about the CIA strikes in Pakistan. And then the man who was operating the sort of joystick that you see there in front of you, saying how difficult it was to go to his son's soccer match after he was done with his day at work, because he knew of all of the men and women overseas who'd been fighting this war. So I can't help but to think about him and the people there, this effort that sort of permeated the entire country, not only the operations overseas. They've got to be thinking tonight, too, finally a victory, and finally perhaps there's an end game in sight. People have been tweeting, when, though, did the troops come home? And we've all been reporting that that's not going to be anytime soon, because Al-Qaeda is a network, as we've been reporting. Osama bin Laden is just one figurehead.
Okay, David Muir, thanks very much. I'm joined now by Anna Ielpi on the phone. Your husband, Leanne, is a survivor of 9/11, but your son, a firefighter, was lost in the aftermath. Your thoughts tonight?
My thoughts tonight is joy, yet we were all crying, but I guess that's tears of joy. Finally, somebody, all the soldiers that were killed over in Afghanistan, 2,900 people on 9/11, in New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. It's very hard for me to put a word to it. Relief, thank God. Thank God he's gone. And if he's going to see his Allah, I think his Allah is not where our Allah is going to be. He's burning in hell right now.
Where were you when you got the news?
I was at home.
And how did you first hear?
Of 9/11?
No, of tonight. The news.
I was actually watching television, and I saw that Channel 4 was going to, the president was going to have a very special statement to make. And our friends that live in Vermont, he called, and he was ecstatic. You got to turn on Fox. You got to listen to Geraldo, and Geraldo was joyous and clapping his hands and smiling. That's the way I feel. I wanted to go down out in the street and sing and scream. I wanted to drive down the street with my horn blowing, but you can't do that.
And we're seeing that now. It is happening at Ground Zero. It is happening at the White House.
I wish I could be there.
I'll bet you. I'll bet you do. And this has been such a long time coming. Nearly 10 years since 9/11. 10 years you've been waiting.
Right. I didn't think we would ever see it. I really, the government kept on saying, "No, we're going to get them, we're going to get them." But personally, I said they're never going to get them. Then, thank God they did.
Thank God they did.
Thank God they did.
That sums it up. Anna Alpi, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're, of course, on the air right now because Osama bin Laden has been killed. President Obama announced it shortly from the East Room of the White House just a little while ago. It was an operation he ordered today based on intelligence they first developed back in August that Osama bin Laden was in a town about 40 miles northwest of Islamabad, Pakistan, Abbottabad, Pakistan. This was not in the mountains, but a mansion in the middle of a town, in the middle of a town that was a military outpost also for the Pakistani government. It was an operation, 20 to 25 Americans going in hand-to-hand combat after being let off on helicopters. Bin Laden's body is in United States custody. It was retrieved by Navy SEALs. The DNA has been confirmed. No photos yet of Osama bin Laden have been released, but President Obama delivered the news in an extraordinary address from the East Room of the White House just after 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time Sunday night, calling it the most significant achievement so far against al-Qaeda. President Obama coming into office saying that he would make getting Osama bin Laden his #1 national security priority in order to protect the United States. And outside the White House, as the president spoke, absolute jubilation. Spontaneous singing of the national anthem, chanting, waving of American flags. It's also begun to happen at Ground Zero. Chris Cuomo just reporting that about 1,000 people have started to gather at Ground Zero as well. The reaction pouring in from all across the United States, all across the world, from former presidents. George W. Bush, who said, "Tonight, America has sent an unmistakable message. No matter how long it takes, justice will be done." And that's exactly quoting what the President Obama said tonight as well. Justice has been served. Yet the danger is not over. The United States has put its embassies on alert as warning Americans that al-Qaeda may attempt attacks in retaliation for bin Laden's killing. And tonight is the 10th anniversary of the worst attack on U.S. soil, one that took 2,974 lives, approaches. The man who engineered that operation is dead. Brian Ross.
He was killed in a firefight. U.S. Navy SEALs, a small team of 20 to 30, choppered in from Afghanistan into this town in Pakistan. It's a city of 80,000 people. He reportedly was living in a specially built mansion with steel walls. We're getting reports on the ground now from Pakistan of the name of the person who owned the compound and the possible connections to bin Laden. This is a town with a major military establishment. It's on the principal road that goes between Pakistan and China, from Islamabad, the capital, into China. He was hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight, but immediately after those attacks of 9/11, Osama bin Laden was quick to take credit.
Calculated the number of casualties from the enemy who would be killed based on the position of the tower. We calculated that the floors that would be hit would be 3 or 4 floors. I was the most optimistic of them all. Due to my experience in this field, I was thinking that the fire from the gas in the plane would melt the iron structure of the building and collapse the area where the plane hit and all the floors above it only. This is all that we had hoped for. Allah be praised. The difference between the first and the second plane hitting the towers was 20 minutes. And the difference between the first plane and the plane that hit the Pentagon was 1 hour. The Americans were terrified, thinking there was a coup.
And Christian Armanpour is here with me. Remarkable to think that it's been nearly 10 years since that operation, since he took credit for it, and as Stephen Hadley, President Bush's national security advisor, was saying just moments ago, hiding in plain sight.
And you remember, George, that video was discovered after the United States invaded Afghanistan. It was discovered about November 2001. And the reason for its significance, and I remember we all had chills up our spine, was this was the first visual evidence that Osama bin Laden was claiming responsibility for 9/11. So many of his supporters, so many people in that part of the world were saying, no, no, it's not Osama bin Laden. There were all these crazy conspiracy theories that it could have been anybody but Osama bin Laden. But there he is, making the gestures with his hands, describing what he thought was going to happen. He, as an engineer, thought that maybe only the top levels of those buildings would collapse, and he's saying that he was surprised that the whole building collapsed.
And this was something he had been planning for several years.
Precisely. And this was something that, again, I remember so clearly what happened in September of 2001, even before, just in the days before, the leader of the Afghan Mujahideen, Ahmad Shah Massoud, had been killed, and that then led the next day to the 9/11, and it was considered Osama bin Laden was trying to do a favor for the Taliban in Afghanistan by getting rid of their big nemesis, who was Ahmad Shah Massoud, the great Mujahideen leader who had helped fight the Soviets out of Afghanistan in the late 80s. And so all of this led then to him doing 9/11.
And of course we still have more than 100,000 troops in Afghanistan. I want to go to Mike Betcher, who's been embedded with the troops in recent days and weeks. And Mike, the word getting out now throughout the world that Osama bin Laden is dead. What are you hearing from the troops on the ground?
Well, I have talked to the command at ISAF headquarters just about a mile away from me, and they say they're watching the same thing we are. They're watching to see what happens on the street, and this is a very dangerous time here because this announcement coincides with the Taliban announcement that they began their spring offensive yesterday. So already Kabul was on a virtual lockdown, the international community, because there is a worry of suicide bomb attacks here. There was one last night in a province to the south of us, or yesterday, a 12-year-old child detonated a vest. Now, these suicide attacks will be, according to U.S. officials, originate from North Waziristan, which borders Khost province here in Afghanistan. They will be led by something called the Haqqani Network, which is one of the most lethal Taliban/Al-Qaeda networks in this region, George.
And David?
Listen, I'm just reading this email now, George, as I had mentioned to you, crossing from one of our producers who was actually on board a flight from LaGuardia Airport here in New York, headed to Miami. A sign of how much things have changed since 9/11 because of those cable monitors you're able to watch now while you're flying in the air. The cable networks had broken in with the news, obviously, as so have we. And he points out that there were not only cheers that they were watching in front of the White House, but cheers 35,000 feet up in the air in the plane. It's a chilling thing to
And
think
again,
about.
I'll never forget being on a plane right on the day of 9/11, trying to get to the story, and the pilot of the plane came out into the cockpit and took the microphone and took the extraordinary step. This is on the day of 9/11. He said to all of us, look around, look at your fellow passenger. If there's anything that you suspect, tell us immediately. It was terrifying. I'll never forget that moment.
Everything has changed about the way we fly since then, since 9/11, because Osama bin Laden. And Martha Raddatz, it's impossible, as David and Christian talk about the scene inside those planes, hard not to think about what those last moments must have been like inside United Flight 93 as it went down in Pennsylvania, the flights also that went down into the Pentagon. What a stark contrast.
It is such a stark contrast, and being at the airport tonight, as I said earlier, I was on my way to Afghanistan, and when we heard the news that the president was making this announcement and started getting word that in fact Osama bin Laden had been killed, got off the plane, I was standing there tonight, and people were just glued to the television set, giving the big thumbs up. This is a great moment, and people were really buzzing about this at the airport. I'm also starting to get some emails from troops in Afghanistan. Some of those troops I was on my way to see a giant hua, which is the army expression. It's very, very good news. They said in one of the mess halls tonight that everyone was gathered around the TV set there, and the same thing. They were all shouting and giving each other the high five. A huge motivator. But also, George, one of the commanders said to me in an email, this is great news, but we've got to stay at it. There's still a lot more work to be done.
So much more work to be done, and we've heard these reminders so often, Martha. This is this war, this generational war on terror is not going to end with some signing of a peace treaty on the deck of an aircraft carrier. That this is going to be a continuing war, that even with the death of Osama bin Laden is not going to go away, is not going to end. But what a victory tonight.
It is just a momentous victory for the intelligence community, for the military. And George, you know, when I go over there, I always ask those troops, those young troops especially, where they were on 9/11. And several months ago, one of them looked at me and said, "Ma'am, I was in the 6th grade." So those 18, 19, 20-year-olds are over there tonight who are just children on 9/11, 2001, and they will continue to fight. But boy, tonight they are celebrating.
They are, and Christiane Amanpour joins me as well, and the President taking pains tonight to remind Americans also that we are not at war with Islam, and we're just getting word from the Associated Press from a U.S. official that the United States is ensuring that bin Laden's body is handled in accordance with Islamic tradition.
All of this very important symbolically, again, for the United States to keep the high road, because as you know, what happened very quickly, despite President Bush's best efforts to say we are not at war with Islam, it was perceived because of the invasion of Afghanistan, but mostly because of the invasion of Iraq, that there was a war that the United States was waging with Islam. And this, of course, was taken by bin Laden and Zawahiri, his deputy, and all his henchmen and lieutenants around. They played on this notion. And so President Obama is being very careful to again stress that this is not the case. And you remember when President Obama came into office, the very first interview he gave was to an Arab television network. The very first thing he said was that no further generation of Muslim children must grow up thinking that the United States is the enemy. And this is a big part of their foreign policy.
One of the things we'll be watching in the coming days and weeks is how the rest of the Islamic world reacts to this news.
Well, I think, frankly, it'll be positive. You might hear some, you know, sort of hysteria in some corners about some people who may still think that bin Laden is their benefactor. But the Arab world, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, whether it's Yemen, wherever it is, has been tortured by bin Laden as well. He has been after them. He has been after their legitimacy. He's been after getting rid of those authoritarian leaders and dictators who he has said are responsible for so much of the trouble on the streets. So they're all delighted as well that he's gone.
Okay, thank you. I want to bring Jake Tapper back from the White House. We're getting more details on this extraordinary operation, hand-to-hand combat in Pakistan.
It's a remarkable story of these Navy SEALs dispatched to go to this compound. They'd been doing surveillance on it, and they concluded that the only thing that this compound could have been built for, the only reason, would be as a hideout, and it matched the description that experts had made when coming up with a hypothesis of what a bin Laden compound might look like, with high walls and very few access, few windows. They burned trash. It was very difficult to get in or out. It was a $1 million property, but there was no television and no phone. In addition to the courier and his brother, who they knew lived there, those were the individuals that they traced to Osama bin Laden, the courier that was delivering messages from al-Qaeda. There was this other family, this third family, and from descriptions of this family, they decided, according to intelligence reports, that this matched what Osama bin Laden's family would look like. The individuals, his youngest wife, he of course has many wives, his youngest wife in the family. And when the Navy SEALs went in there today, of course, this hypothesis, this strong conclusion that they had that this was likely Osama bin Laden's compound came true. And bin Laden resisted, of course, and fought. There was a firefight, a fierce firefight. The operation took roughly 40 minutes. Two of the couriers were killed. Osama bin Laden, one of his sons, was killed. Of course, bin Laden was killed. A woman who they used as a shield was killed. Ultimately, the U.S. soldiers were killed, and they're bringing back bin Laden's body.
And Jake, forgive me if you don't know the answer to this question, but I have got to ask, do we know if Osama bin Laden was actually shooting himself?
We have not been told that as of now. It does not sound like it was a huge number of people out at this compound. It sounds relatively small, but we do not know yet.
Okay, let me go to Pierre Thomas now from the Justice Department. Pierre?
Well, one of the things that Jake just talked about that is key, bin Laden was afraid to use any type of electronic communication. No phones, computers. He did not want to use it. He was desperately afraid of that. And law enforcement officials had talked to me through the years about the fact that this was making it so difficult to capture or kill him is because he didn't use electronic communication, because he knew the big ear of the United States intelligence community was listening. So the intelligence that the couriers were living in that area was key to finding him, the source said tonight. And again, without that, this never would have happened.
And Pierre, we're all focused now also on what is going to happen next. You, at the Justice Department, the FBI, Homeland Security, they've been so focused on attacks here in the United States, and we're learning now that police in major cities across the United States are developing plans for additional outreach in Muslim communities and stepped up patrols at mosques.
Well, this is a serious time. One official tonight did not take the time to bask in the glory of what just happened. They talked about going forward. They talked about the notion of notifying law enforcement. You see the State Department tonight issuing travel alerts about travel across the world to be concerned about potential attacks. Again, no specific threat has been identified, but the officials I'm talking to tonight are saying you must look for the potential of a retaliatory attack, and that's exactly what they're going to do.
Everyone on high alert right now, but there's also tremendous jubilation. Chris Cuomo down at Ground Zero. The crowds have been gathering. The horns have been honking for the last hour.
Yeah, George, since I last spoke to you, they've closed off several of the streets down here, kind of surrendering to the moment. The local police were telling me it's not worth trying to clear people out. They need to have this moment. There are now about 4,000 people that are filling the streets down here at Church and Vesey, one of the most famous corners of the old World Trade Center. And you're seeing the whole range here. There are victims' families who have come down. People are on the phone. They're crying. They're calling people to come here and gather. You're hearing things like, we're all family tonight. Yes, you are hearing that reserved hostility towards Osama bin Laden and a lot of the ugliness that goes along with that, and the feeling that there has been justice. But there's not nearly as much of that as there is celebration, singing of the national anthem. Right now I'm looking at least a dozen flags who are waving. It's not unlike New Year's Eve. And as one victim's family member told me, in her mind, everything begins anew because of this. Now that said, it's still early. All of these people seem to be on the phone, George, telling other people to come here. The question is what it becomes later on. But right now, there's a lot of love. I mean, you know George very well, and everybody who's listening to this broadcast knows everybody feels like they were a victim of 9/11. Everybody knows somebody who was lost. And I'm running into people here in the crowd who I know, and we share people in common who we've lost. And for people like that, this was a moment that has been very long in the coming.
It was a day that transformed America, changed the way we lived in so many ways. We've been fighting wars now for 10 years. I want to bring in Brian Ross, our chief investigator, of course, Mike, because we're all starting to get pictures of the compound where this operation took place today.
Absolutely, in this town of Abbottabad. And remarkably, in January of this year, a much-wanted Islamic militant was picked up and captured in this town. Another al-Qaeda figure was captured in January by forces. This is the town. We're told there is a fire underway, according to reports we're getting on the ground. And these pictures here from Geo Television, Pakistani network, that there was a fire there that continues. The operation may be ongoing, we're told, with more developments to come.
Ongoing, was it still a U.S. involvement?
The U.S. is out of there. As best we know, the team was there, is out of there. But this is a place where a specially built compound was served as bin Laden's safe haven for so many years, with a military garrison nearby.
But he must not have had that much armed protection if he could be overtaken by 20 to 25 Navy SEALs.
That is a surprise. It was thought that he could probably have 20 to 25 bodyguards himself, based on Jake Tapper's reporting from the White House. It seems the only people who put up the fight were the two couriers and perhaps bin Laden himself. The president said after a firefight, bin Laden was killed by the U.S. personnel.
And his body is being handled, the White House says tonight, in accordance with Islamic tradition. For those who didn't see earlier, the president went to the East Room of the White House around 11:30 Eastern Time to say that justice has been done.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. Then, last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
The president earlier this evening from the East Room at the White House, Jake Tapper, is at the White House with more details on that extraordinary operation.
It sounds as though we're told by senior administration officials that Osama bin Laden did engage in firing himself in this firefight when the Navy SEALs stormed the compound in this hideout that had been built for him in 2005. And Osama bin Laden, 2 couriers and one of bin Laden's sons was killed as well. As a woman that these members of al-Qaeda used as a human shield. It was a fierce and ferocious firefight, but ultimately the U.S. was victorious. They had been doing surveillance on this compound for months and months and concluded that it was almost certainly where bin Laden would be hiding. Incredible tension in the Situation Room after the president gave the order, and the Navy SEALs, 2 helicopters full of Navy SEALs, went to this compound in Pakistan, then stormed the compound. It was about a 40-minute operation. They came back, and an incredible sigh of relief in the Situation Room by the president, his national security officials, and out in the street, George. I know you've shown this a few times. It's an incredible scene of Americans just coming together at the White House, celebrating this moment, this victory against this man that caused so many Americans so much pain, so much heartache, changed the course of history in a horrible way.
And Jake, we're seeing it now. The crowd just continues to multiply. It's like growing, like amoebas, doubling and redoubling again and again and again. It just gets bigger outside the White House. And the president, in his remarks tonight, saying that he hopes this brings about the kind of unity we all felt in those days immediately after 9/11. But he admitted that it had been lost in the 10 years since.
There's an interesting thing that happens in moments such as this. After 9/11, a bipartisan group of members of Congress went outside the Capitol and sang, I believe, God Bless America. And people want to do something. And even though it's very late here in Washington on this Sunday evening, and people have to go to work tomorrow, people are excited. They want to do something. And the natural place seems to be, I suppose, to come to the White House, in front of the White House, Pennsylvania Avenue, a place that you used to be able to drive down, but now in this new era of heightened security, you can't. But Americans are coming together and celebrating what is a remarkable moment in American history in the fight against terrorism, George.
They are gathering in Times Square as well. We have live pictures of Times Square right now as the crowds start to gather to celebrate the word that Osama bin Laden has been killed. David Muir, Facebook, Twitter, the reactions just overwhelming the systems.
Yeah, really lightning speed, George. As soon as we went on the air tonight, and as we were even waiting for the president, and we had confirmation, it was already on Twitter and on Facebook. And one of the things that you heard President Obama say tonight, and I think this is going to be key in the next 24 hours of coverage, is how apolitical the capture of Osama bin Laden is. You're seeing people wrapping themselves in the American flag in front of this White House. He said he calls for the same kind of unity that we saw, you know, in the days after 9/11. We will never forget President George W. Bush on top of the pile with the megaphone and this country rallying around him. Obama now hoping for the same.
And Christian, there was a moment also where the world had gathered around, rallied around the United States in support of the United States. Did not last long.
You remember practically the day after 9/11, there was this iconic headline in the French newspaper Le Monde which says, today we are all Americans. So the world really did rally around the United States, and much of it did last. A lot of it was frayed, particularly in the Muslim world over the war in Iraq. But a lot of that fervor came together, and there's been so much joint effort by the United States and so many of its allies in the fight against terrorism, not just the military fight, but the financial fight and all those ways of trying to lock down these terrorists. But I think what's so interesting is that the polling shows that so many people had given up hope here in the United States.
Well, because the trail had been lost so many times, but the fight continued. Osama bin Laden killed today. I'm joined also here now by Charles Wolf, your wife, Catherine.
Yes.
Died in the World Trade Center nearly 10 years ago today. And tonight you get the news that Osama bin Laden is dead.
What a night. That's all I can tell you. I'm still tingling. I mean, I was at home exhausted from today. I was right here this afternoon shopping over at Gracious Home. And I just took my shoes off, and all of a sudden the phone rang, and it was another network calling. And then a friend called, and then they called back.
Did you believe it?
Oh, yeah. I believed it. I was, you know, it wasn't something I was waiting for. It just was wonderful to hear. It was just absolutely wonderful. I jumped in a taxi. The taxi driver got excited. He hadn't heard about it. I started tingling all over the place. And I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased because there is no court on earth that could do justice to what this man does, nor what KSM did along with him. Okay? No court on earth could do justice. And now this man's evil energy has been taken off of our planet, and God is going to throw his soul to the depths of hell.
I almost don't know how to respond to that. I can feel your emotion.
This is something. I mean, you know, there may be some short-term retaliations, but that evil that man led. This is good and evil. President Bush described it as good and evil, and the evil that man led. There's going to be a major shift in that whole thing, and you'll see a difference over the next few months. That energy is off of this planet.
You say this is not something you've been waiting for, but clearly something you've been hoping for. How important is it to have this moment?
There's a degree of satisfaction, and not necessarily a satisfaction that he's dead, because I said the judge of all people, the judge of all things, will take care of that. And I know, you know, we share a similar faith. What it is that we beat them at their own game. We didn't give up. Regardless of what president, I got to make sure it's Obama versus Osama. It's very easy to switch those names around. You take President Obama, you know, and he called for the end of the war. But when he got into office, he saw the reality of the situation, and he kept on the strategy that President Bush had started. And he kept on, and I know our men in uniform want the same thing, because I live in Greenwich Village, and when they come down there to the bars in Greenwich Village, I see our troops, and I talk to them, and I thank them, and I cry sometimes with them, and I know that they have this in their heart too. But we beat them at their own game. We didn't give up. 10 years. Remember, it was 8 years between 1993 and 2001.
And quickly, what do you want to happen tomorrow?
Tomorrow, I want the American people to be happy, but we continue to need to be vigilant, because this deal is not over yet. It's not over, okay? And I don't want us to be so happy that we let our guard down. We need to be happy, but vigilant.
That is an important reminder. Charles Wolf, thanks very much for coming in. Tonight, your wife lost in the World Trade Center, but tonight, as President Obama said, justice has been done. Osama bin Laden has been killed. We're going to return now to regular programming. ABC News will be here all night following this developing story. Our coverage continues on World News Now. We're going to have a special edition of Good Morning America in the morning. You can get the latest anytime at abcnews.com. And we want to leave you now with the images of the celebrations in Washington, D.C. I'm George Stephanopoulos. Have a good night.